The notification pinged at 2 a.m., sharp and insistent, pulling me from a restless sleep. My phone glowed on the nightstand, and for reasons I couldn't explain, my heart sank before I even unlocked it. The message was from my mother's phone, a screenshot accidentally sent to me. "Lila's our family ATM again. $2, $500 this month. Lucky us." I sat up, the words searing into my brain. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the group chat I wasn't supposed to see. A thread between my parents and my older brother, David. Each message was a dagger. "She's got no kids, no husband. What else is she gonna do with that money?" My breath caught, ragged and shallow, as I realized the people I'd sacrificed saw me as nothing more than a cash machine. My name is Lila Harper, 30 years old, a financial analyst who clawed her way up from a small-town diner job to a corner office in Chicago. I've been sending my parents $2,500 every month for 3 years. $90,000 total, to keep them afloat after Dad's hardware store went under. I'd skipped vacations, worked overtime, and lived in a modest studio apartment to make it happen. All because I believed family came first. All because I thought they needed me. The betrayal burned, but it wasn't just the words. It was the years of late-night calls from Mom, her voice trembling as she described medical bills or a leaky roof. It was Dad's gruff gratitude, always followed by a request for just a little more next month. It was David, my charming, unemployed brother, who'd borrowed thousands from me for his business ventures, none of which ever materialized. I told myself I was helping, that I was the good daughter, the responsible one. But the group chat laid it bare. I was their fool. I didn't sleep that night. By dawn, my shock had hardened into something else. Resolve. I wasn't going to confront them, not yet. I wanted answers, proof of how deep this went. I wanted to know who my family really was. So I did what I do best. I started digging. First, I checked my parents' bank statements, which they'd given me access to for transparency. The $2,500 I sent each month wasn't going to bills or repairs. There were withdrawals for luxury dinners, a new TV, even a deposit for a cruise. My stomach churned as I cross-referenced David's Venmo transactions. Money I'd sent him for emergencies had funded bar tabs and designer clothes. They weren't struggling. They were living better than I was. I called in sick to work, too raw to focus, and spent the day piecing together their lies. Mom's hospital bills were for routine checkups, covered by insurance. The leaky roof was a remodel they'd bragged about to neighbors. David's latest business was a pyramid scheme he'd abandoned after a month. Every plea, every tearful call, had been a performance, and I'd fallen for it month after month, because I wanted to believe they loved me. By evening, I was numb but resolute. I wouldn't just stop the payments. That was too easy, too quiet. They needed to feel the weight of what they'd done, to understand the cost of treating me like a transaction. I remembered a colleague, Sarah, who'd once mentioned her cousin, a private investigator. I called her, voice steady, and hired him on the spot. His name was Marcus, and he promised to dig deeper into my family's finances and communications. "Give me a week," he said. "I'll find the truth." I didn't know what I'd do with the truth yet, but I knew it would change everything. As I hung up, I stared at my phone, the group chat still open. Family ATM. The words echoed, but they didn't break me. They lit a fire. I was done being their machine. I was going to be their reckoning. The next morning, I woke to a text from Mom. "Lila, honey, can you send this month's $2,500 early? Furnace is acting up." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. The old me would have sent the money without a second thought, but now I saw the lie for what it was. I typed, "I'll look into it," and left it at that. Let them sweat. Marcus, the private investigator, was already at work. He called that afternoon with a preliminary report. "Your parents' house is paid off," he said, his voice calm but pointed. "No outstanding debts, no liens. They've been funneling your money into savings and discretionary spending." He paused. "Your brother's a piece of work, too. He's been using your cash to fund a side hustle selling knockoff watches online. Not exactly legal. I gripped the phone, my pulse racing. How long have they been doing this? Years, Marcus said. I'm still digging into their emails and texts. I'll have more by tomorrow. I thanked him and hung up, my mind spinning. I'd always known David was reckless, but my parents? They'd raised me to value honesty, to work hard. How had they become so comfortable exploiting me? I needed to see it for myself to confront the reality head-on. So, I booked a flight to my hometown, a small speck in Ohio, for the weekend. I didn't tell them I was coming. The plane ride was a blur of anger and memories. I thought of the summers I'd spent helping Dad at the hardware store, learning to balance the books at 14. I thought of Mom's warm hugs, her stories about sacrificing for us kids. Had it all been a lie? Or had they changed, hardened by their own struggles? I didn't know which answer hurt more. When I landed, I rented a car and drove to their house, parking a block away. It was Saturday, and their street was quiet, the kind of place where neighbors waved and kids rode bikes. Their house looked better than ever, new siding, fresh paint, a shiny SUV in the driveway. My money, I thought bitterly. I stayed in the car, watching, waiting for something to make sense. That's when I saw David pull up. He hopped out, grinning, carrying a box of what looked like golf clubs. Golf clubs. My brother, who'd claimed he couldn't afford rent, was buying golf clubs. I wanted to storm out and scream, but I held back. Marcus had warned me, don't act until you have all the facts. So, I waited, snapping photos as evidence. That night, I checked into a motel and opened my laptop. Marcus had sent an encrypted file with more findings. My parents had a second bank account I didn't know about with $60,000 saved, almost all from my transfers. They'd also co-signed a loan for David's business, which explained why he was still asking me for money. The kicker? An email from Mom to David. Don't worry about Lila. She's got no one else to spend it on. I slammed the laptop shut, tears stinging my eyes. It wasn't just about the money. It was the dismissal, the assumption that my life didn't matter because I wasn't married, didn't have kids. I'd built a career, a life on my own terms, but to them I was just a resource. I lay awake, plotting my next move. Confrontation was coming, but it had to be strategic. I needed them to see themselves, to feel the shame of what they'd done. By Sunday, I was ready to face them. I drove to their house, my heart pounding but my resolve unshaken. This wasn't just about stopping the payments. It was about reclaiming my worth, about showing them that I was more than their family ATM. As I knocked on their door, I braced myself for the storm ahead. The door swung open, and Mom's smile froze when she saw me. Lila? What are you doing here? Her voice was too high, her eyes darting like she'd been caught stealing. I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, my bag slung over my shoulder, heavy with the weight of Marcus's evidence. I needed to see you, I said, my tone calm but cold. Dad was in the living room, flipping through a golf magazine. Another stab to my gut. David wasn't there, but I'd deal with him later. I sat on their new leather couch, the one I'd probably paid for, and looked them in the eyes. We need to talk about the money. Mom's face paled, but she recovered quickly, waving a hand. Oh, honey, you know how much we appreciate your help. Things have been so tight. Stop. I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshot of their group chat. I held it up, watching their expressions collapse as they read the words, Family ATM. Dad's magazine slipped to the floor. Mom's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Lila, that was just a joke, Dad stammered, his voice weak. You know we don't mean it like that. A joke, I repeated, my voice rising. 3 years, $90,000, and you call me an ATM behind my back? You lied about medical bills, about the roof, about everything. I've been killing myself to keep you afloat, and you're buying cruises and golf clubs. Mom started to cry, but I wasn't moved. Not this time. "We didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. We got used to it. You were doing so well and we thought. You thought I owed you," I finished for her. "Because I'm single, because I don't have kids, my money's just what? Free for the taking." Dad stood, his face red. "That's not fair, Lila. We raised you. We gave you everything. And I've repaid you," I shot back. "I've repaid you 10 times over. But you don't get to treat me like a bank and expect me to smile about it." The room went silent, the air thick with tension. I pulled out the folder Marcus had prepared, bank statements, emails, proof of their deception. I laid it on the coffee table. "This is what you've been doing with my money. Savings accounts, luxury dinners, David scams. You didn't need me. You used me." Mom reached for the folder, her hands shaking, but I pulled it back. "No, you don't get to touch this until you explain why. Why did you lie? Why did you let me think you were desperate?" Dad sank back into his chair, rubbing his face. "After the store failed, we were ashamed," he said quietly. "You were so successful, and we didn't want to look like failures. Your money made us feel like we were still in control." Mom nodded, tears streaming. "We didn't think you'd mind. You never said no." Her words hit like a slap. They'd taken my silence, my generosity, as permission to exploit me. I stood, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "I'm done. No more money. No more lies. You need to figure out how to live without me." I walked out, their pleas echoing behind me. But I wasn't finished. David was next, and I had a plan to make sure he felt the consequences, too. As I drove away, I felt lighter, like I'd shed a weight I'd carried for years. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of taking back my life. I found David at his favorite bar, the one he'd been funding with my money. He was laughing, a beer in one hand, charming the bartender like he didn't have a care in the world. The sight of him, so carefree while I'd been breaking my back, ignited something fierce in me. I walked up, my folder of evidence tucked under my arm, and tapped his shoulder. "We need to talk." His grin faltered when he saw my face. "Lila? What's up? You look pissed." I didn't sit. I stood over him, my voice low but firm. "I saw the group chat, David. Family ATM? Really?" His eyes widened, and he set the beer down, hands raised like he could deflect the truth. "I know about the watches, the loans, the lies. You've been playing me for years." "It wasn't like that," he said quickly, but his voice cracked. "Mom and Dad needed help, and I just—" "Stop," I snapped. "You're not a kid anymore. You're 35, and you've been leeching off me while lying to my face." I dropped the folder on the bar, pages spilling out. Bank records, his Venmo history, emails between him and Mom plotting how to keep Lila generous. The bartender glanced over, curious, but I didn't care. David's face drained of color. "Lila, I swear, I was gonna pay you back." "With what?" "Your fake watch empire." I leaned in, my voice cutting. "You took $20,000 from me for businesses that don't exist. You let Mom and Dad think I'm just a wallet." "Why?" He looked away, jaw tight. "You've always had it together, Lila. The big job, the fancy city life. We were drowning and you were fine. It was easy to lean on you." "Easy." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "I worked 80-hour weeks. I gave up vacations, a bigger apartment, a life because I thought you all needed me. And you mocked me for it." He didn't answer, just stared at the folder like it was a bomb. I straightened, calmer now but resolute. "The money stops now, and if you try to guilt me again, I'll turn this evidence over to the cops. Your side hustle isn't exactly legal, is it?" David's head snapped up, panic in his eyes. "You wouldn't." "Try me," I said, and walked out. Back at the motel, I called Marcus for an update. He'd uncovered more. David had been dodging taxes on his shady sales, and my parents had been funneling some of my money to a retirement fund they hadn't disclosed. The betrayal kept growing, a hydra with endless heads. But I wasn't just angry anymore, I was strategic. I told Marcus to compile everything into a legal dossier. I wasn't sure yet if I'd press charges, but I wanted the option. The next day, I met with a lawyer in town, a sharp woman named Rachel who specialized in financial fraud. She reviewed the evidence and whistled. "You've got a case, Lila. Emotional manipulation, potential fraud, especially with your brother. What do you want to do?" I didn't want revenge. Not exactly. I wanted accountability. I wanted them to understand the cost of their actions, to feel the void they'd created in me. Rachel suggested a civil suit to recover some of the money, paired with a cease and desist letter to stop their harassment. I agreed, but I also wanted something else. A meeting, all of us, where they'd face the truth together. I spent the rest of the day drafting a letter, not to send but to read aloud when the time came. It was raw, honest, every word a piece of the pain I'd carried. As I wrote, I realized this wasn't just about the money. It was about rebuilding myself, about refusing to be defined by their greed. The meeting was set for tomorrow. I was ready to face them all. The meeting was set for noon at my parents' house. I arrived early, my letter folded in my pocket, Rachel's legal dossier in a briefcase. My parents were already there, sitting stiffly at the dining table, their faces a mix of guilt and defiance. David slunk in late, avoiding my eyes. The air was thick, like the moment before a storm breaks. I didn't waste time. "I've asked you here because you've been lying to me." I began, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. "For years, I thought I was helping you survive. But you were using me, mocking me behind my back." I pulled out my phone and read the group chat aloud. "Lila's our family ATM again. $2, 500 this month. Lucky us." Mom flinched, tears welling, but I kept going. "I've got proof, bank statements, emails, your secret savings account. You took $90,000 from me, not for survival but for luxuries. David, you used my money for scams. All of you betrayed me." Dad's voice was hoarse. "Lila, we never meant." "Don't." I cut him off. "You meant every word in that chat. You meant to lie about medical bills, about the roof, about needing me." I opened the dossier, spreading out the evidence. "This is what you've done. And this," I pulled out my letter, "is what it's done to me." I read it aloud, my voice shaking but clear. "I gave you everything because I believed in family. I worked myself to exhaustion, thinking I was saving you. But you saw me as a tool, not a daughter, not a sister. You broke my trust, and you broke my heart." By the end, Mom was sobbing, Dad's head was bowed, and David looked like he wanted to disappear. Rachel stepped in, her tone professional but firm. "Lila has grounds for a civil suit to recover her money. She could also pursue criminal charges against David for his illegal sales. You've got a choice. Make this right or face the consequences." Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "Lila, please," she whispered. "We'll pay you back. We'll do anything." I shook my head. "This isn't about money anymore. It's about respect. You don't get to cry now and expect forgiveness. You need to earn it." I outlined my terms. They'd sign a legal agreement to repay half the $90,000 over 5 years. No contact unless I initiated it, and David had to shut down his business or I'd report him. They agreed, reluctantly, their faces etched with shame. Rachel drafted the papers on the spot, and they signed, the pen scratching like a confession. As I left, I felt no triumph, only a hollow relief. I'd stood up for myself, but the family I'd loved was gone, replaced by strangers who'd valued my money more than me. Back in Chicago, I started therapy, something I'd avoided for years. My therapist, Dr. Ellis, helped me see that my worth wasn't tied to their approval. I began rebuilding, small steps at first, joining a book club, planning a trip I'd always postponed. The pain lingered, but it was no longer a cage. I was free, not just from their demands, but from the version of myself I'd let them define. The weeks after the meeting were quiet, too quiet. My phone, once buzzing with texts from Mom or David's, emergencies, was silent. The legal agreement was in place, and Rachel assured me the repayments would start next month. But the silence wasn't peace. It was a void where my family used to be. I'd won, but it felt like losing. I threw myself into work, but my heart wasn't in it. My colleagues noticed. Sarah, my friend from the office, pulled me aside one day. "Lila, you're not yourself. What's going on?" Over coffee, I told her everything, the words spilling out like a dam breaking. She listened, her eyes soft with empathy, and when I finished, she hugged me. "You're stronger than you know," she said. "But you don't have to do this alone." Her words stuck with me. I'd always prided myself on independence, but maybe that was part of the problem. I'd isolated myself, pouring everything into my family's needs. So I took her advice. I started saying yes to dinners with friends, to a pottery class I'd always wanted to try. Slowly, I began to feel like me again. Not the family ATM, but Lila, with dreams and desires of her own. Marcus sent a final report, confirming David had shut down his watch scam and my parents had canceled their cruise. They were complying, but I didn't care about their actions anymore. Cared about mine. Dr. Ellis helped me unpack the guilt I felt for cutting them off, for choosing myself. "You're not abandoning them," she said. "You're protecting your peace." One evening, I got an unexpected call from my cousin, Emma, who'd heard whispers about the fallout. "I had no idea they were doing that to you," she said, her voice thick with anger. "You don't deserve that, Lila." She invited me to her family's Thanksgiving, a small gathering in Columbus. I hesitated. Holidays had always been with my parents, but I said yes. It was time to build new traditions. Thanksgiving was warm, messy, real. Emma's kids ran around, her husband burned the rolls, and we laughed until our sides hurt. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged, not because I was paying for anything, but because I was wanted. I told Emma about the group chat, and she shook her head. "They don't know what they've lost," she said. "But you're going to be okay." I believed her. Back in Chicago, I started saving the $2,500 I'd been sending my parents. I opened a travel fund, dreaming of Italy, of seeing the Colosseum at sunrise. I bought a bigger apartment, one with a view of the lake, and filled it with plants and books, things that made it mine. The repayments from my parents started coming, small but steady, and I donated them to a local charity for struggling families. I didn't want their money. I wanted to break the cycle. One night, I found an old photo of me and my parents, laughing at a picnic when I was 10. I didn't cry, but I let myself feel the grief. They weren't monsters, just flawed people who'd made selfish choices. I hoped they'd learn, but that wasn't my burden anymore. I was writing a new story, one where I was the hero, not the ATM. And for the first time, I felt like I was enough. A year passed, and the wound, though still tender, had begun to heal. My life was fuller now. Friends, hobbies, a trip to Italy booked for the spring. The repayments from my parents continued, each check a quiet acknowledgement of their debt. But I hadn't spoken to them since the meeting. David sent one text, a half-hearted apology, but I didn't reply. Some bridges need to stay burned. One morning, a letter arrived, handwritten, from Mom. I almost tossed it, but curiosity won. She wrote about their shame, their attempts to change. Dad volunteering at a community center, her joining a book club. "We didn't realize how much we hurt you," she wrote. "We're trying to be better. Not for your money, but for you." I read it twice, searching for manipulation, but found none. Still, I wasn't ready to respond. Trust, once broken, takes time. I showed the letter to Dr. Ellis, who nodded. "You don't owe them forgiveness," she said, "but you can choose how much space they get in your heart." I decided to keep the door cracked, not open. Maybe one day we'd talk, but it would be on my terms. At work, I got a promotion, a corner office with my name on the door. My colleagues threw a party, and as I looked around at their smiling faces, I realized I'd built a new family, one that valued me for me. Sarah, now my closest friend, toasted to my strength, and I felt it, deep, unshakable, mine. The charity I donated to invited me to their gala, where they honored me for my contributions. Standing on that stage, I thought of the girl who'd sent $2,500 every month, desperate for her family's love. She was still part of me, but she wasn't all of me. I spoke briefly, my voice steady, about resilience, about choosing yourself. The applause was warm, but what mattered was the peace I'd found. On my last night in Chicago before my Italy trip, I walked by the lake, the city lights glittering like stars. I thought of the group chat, the betrayal that had shattered me. It had also set me free. I wasn't the family ATM anymore. I was Lila Harper, daughter, sister, friend, but most of all myself. And that was enough. As I packed for Italy, I tucked Mom's letter into a drawer. Not a promise, but a possibility. Life was too big, too vibrant, to be tethered to their mistakes. I was ready to see the world, to live for me. The plane ticket in my hand felt like a key, unlocking a future I'd earned, one step at a time.